Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're so glad you joined. And today we have Bryan Carroll. Bryan and I met about 2 months ago. I did a funeral for his father-in-law. Did I say that right? Did I get it right? Is that
Yep.
true? All right.
Sure.
Yeah. So Bill Fletcher went to a church that I pastored. His wife, Carroll Sweeney Fletcher, died a couple months ago. I did the funeral. And Bryan and his wife, Amanda, who is Bill Fletcher's daughter, were at this funeral, and we were talking afterwards a little bit and found out that we were both in recovery. And so it kind of clicked off a whole series of conversation. Found out that he runs Hemingway Unchained Sober Living homes in Wichita. So I was going, oh man, I'd love to interview you, because I interview all kinds of people. Always talk about spirituality, but I interview people that are Christians and Buddhists and rabbis and every kind of spirituality, kind of the higher power kind of world, that the recovery world lives in. But then I interview musicians and CEOs and health workers and just kind of all over the map. We always talk about story and spirituality. But one of my favorite kinds of interviews are people who have gone through deep tragedy, but also walked out the beauty of recovery. So I always find a fellow traveler when I find somebody in recovery. So Bryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good. So let's just jump in with your story. Like, where were you born? Where did you grow up? All that. Get some of your
I was born in Phoenix, Arizona in '83. Lived there for most of my life until I was pretty much 18, 19 years old, and that's when I moved to Wichita.
All right. Tell me about your family background.
My family background: my mother and father, they obviously a broken home. My mom, her family traveled because my grandfather was in the military, and they were in France and they were in Thailand and all over the place. But then they landed in South Phoenix, and that's when she met my father while she was very young, and they started having children. And my father, years later, my father became a drug addict. So we grew up moving from house to house because of his addiction, and he would be selling off our products, and people would be looking for him and looking for things. And so while trying to learn how to be a woman, she was trying to be a single mother at the same time. Not trying, she was doing it. But yeah, just a lot of torment for a lot of years.
Did you have any faith background in all of that?
We did. We went to church. At that time, we had went to a church where a real loud church. People were loud and jumping around and kicking things over, and it was pretty wild. I was really young at the time, so I didn't really understand what was going on.
Kind of like a Pentecostal type church?
Yes, yeah, speaking in tongues, and
Yeah.
and the pastor would be singing and the whole sermon and stuff like that. So yeah, that was quite different.
Black church, white church, mixed?
Black. It was black. It was black.
Church. So black.
Yeah, we were.
Guy singing his sermons. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It was wild, but I got my love for drumming. I got my love for drumming at that church. So, I started playing the drums there very young.
Interesting. Or you self-taught? Do you have a drum teacher?
I pretty much was self-taught. I was surrounded by some people as I grew up that play. So I did get lessons from them a little bit, learn a few things here and there.
Okay, sweet. So, so in high school,
Hmm.
are you involved in any extracurricular stuff like sports or drumming or band? Or,
Nothing, nothing there at the school. I did play the drums for my youth at the church and that sort of thing at the beginning of high school.
okay, all right. So, what tell us what happened as a teenager? How'd you get
Uh,
involved?
the teen as a teenager, I got myself involved in doing drugs and the wrong crowd. The way that it came to me, obviously, it seemed like it was something cool because here was a kid that was a little older than me, and his father, he was a single father, and he met a woman, so he moved into the house with this woman and left his son in this apartment. And he's doing this drug, and I look around me and I think, well, as good as his life looks and as much fun as he's having, this can't be that bad. And I started doing methamphetamines.
That was your yeah. That was your like. You didn't start with weed.
No,
You started
I
with
didn't. I went directly from not doing anything. The worst thing I probably drank was soda pop to meth.
wow, wow. Was it instantaneously like you wanted it first
It's
time?
really weird how that works because the first time that I ever used it, I got sick and I threw up, but I felt good for the rest of the night, and for some reason I was infatuated with wanting to do it again. So I just kept doing it.
Yeah,
And it's weird how the devil works because when you first start doing something like that, it's always offered to you and it's always free and it's always a seems like it's a party or a good time. It doesn't no one tells you that some years later you'll be willing to, steal from a relative to go buy this stuff. It's just all freely given.
yeah. So did it? So what kind of habit? How long did it take to develop to like a daily thing?
It developed into a daily thing right away. And like I said, I spent years in Arizona without getting in any real trouble, but just getting high every day and get skipping out on school, not going to school anymore, and that sort of stuff.
Would it would it ramp you up? Be like an amphetamine where you just got lots of energy?
Yeah, it gave me energy. I could, and one thing I never felt like I was a smart kid. I never had an attention. I couldn't pay attention to things. I always was all over the place. So it also felt like helped me focus is what I felt like. I didn't realize it doesn't matter if you're focused, you're not focusing on the right things because you're focusing on going to get this drug and be able to use this drug. You're not in class focusing on your schoolwork.
Yeah. Yeah, like that like Adderall is kind of like a prescription meth, right? To for some
They
people,
say that.
body
Yeah.
chemistry, it depends on the body chemistry. Like some people do Adderall, and it literally mellows them out and chills them out. But like
Hmm.
college kids, high school college kids start doing Adderall today to study and stay up all late, just like what we used to do on caffeine or something.
Yeah.
It can help at first, but then once you get into it, as you know, all of a sudden, at some
Yeah.
point, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whatever it is, at some point in the progression of the disease, all of a sudden the fun is all gone, and
Yeah.
you're doing it just to keep from like freaking out, getting DTS, and like you're
Yeah, just like with heroin, heroin's a very bad one. It people start off doing heroin and they do it to have fun or to feel good or relax, and the next thing you know, you have to go find the stuff just to be well. I remember people on the streets when I was on meth. Yeah, I would be bummed that I didn't have any drugs, and I'd be trying to figure out how to get some. But these people would literally be sick and couldn't function because they couldn't get high.
yeah. Yeah, I remember when I'd been doing Xanax and alcohol for 2.5 years every night to sleep. And when I first started, like, first time I got off the Xanax, I was sick as a dog for
Yeah.
4 or 5 days. Ugh, that's miserable. So how did yours progress into, like, where did you go from 15 meth? You start doing meth and meth every day.
Yes,
Where
I
did it
started
take?
doing it every day, and it took me to I met, people that are doing these types of drugs. They don't really have a gauge on what's smart to do or not. As I look back, what I used to live through, it's just crazy. I met a gentleman named Joe Porter. He was a plumber, or not a plumber. He worked HVAC or something, but he had money and a house, and just like what drugs do to people, it was just starting to tear his life apart. So he wasn't working. He was living off his savings, and he had another roommate named Jason, and me, Jason, and Joe, and these are grown men. I try to think like if a 15, 16-year-old tried to move into my home right now and I'm a single man, I would know there's something wrong with that. But either way it goes, they didn't. And we were just the three musketeers for a while. So, I worked on cars all the time for him, and I drove Porsches, and we just got high and lived our little drug life. And it was, yeah. So I did that for a long time.
Hmm. Like, dropped out of school, just
Yep.
these
Completely
guys.
left school and just hang out with these guys during the day. And then, I realized that if I started selling some drugs, that I would be able to get more drugs. So, I got into the whole getting plenty of drugs to go out here and sell, and the women and everything that comes along with that life is all we did.
Yeah, yeah. It's out like, hey, I could sell this just to get money, and then it goes from there, right?
Yeah, it just progressed, and yeah,
So how many years was that world going on?
I'm pretty bad with numbers, but quite a few. I mean, I know my clean time. I know how long I've been clean, but as far as that goes,
What's your
I
sobriety?
didn't I I didn't come to Kansas until I was at least 19 years old. My sobriety October 20th and it really is, even though it's my real birthday. I know the first October 1st of 2015, and the 20th is my birthday.
2015.
Hmm.
Which day's your birth? Which is your
October 20th is my physical birthday, and then the 1st of October is when I got clean, got back with my wife, and
okay.
everything was a lot better.
Good, good, good. So okay, so take us down that road a little bit. You got married before you got sober?
Well, no, I got clean and got. I moved out here with my brother who was stationed here. He was in the military, so he come to Arizona because he got some leisure time, and he come across me, and here I was with designer clothes on. I was doing well at the time with money because I was selling drugs and doing whatever I was doing, and I got these designer clothes on and a beautiful car and all these things, and he takes me aside and he says, "Man, you're dying." I probably weighed 80 pounds, and I didn't realize how bad I was looking and what was going on. And he wanted me to have a fresh start, and he says, "Man, you should just come with me to Kansas because there's not going to be much going on out there. It's going to be real kickback, and you can, get your weight back on you, work on your GED, and get yourself together." So I came out here. Well, needless to say, he was wrong about there not being anything going on here in Kansas. If you want to find it, you will.
Right.
So lived with him, did well for quite a while, and I was working at Krispy Kreme Donuts, and I did that one stupid move and asked that question to someone I was working with because they were smoking weed at work. "Hey, man, do you know where to get some of?" And that was it. Once that happened, and by this time I had a child on the way with my first wife.
Okay.
So I had a child on the way, and
Wife in
got
Kansas?
got some in Wichita, Kansas,
Okay.
and I'm out here now. I'm doing what I was doing in Arizona in Wichita. I no longer live with my brother. I've got my own place. I'm running the streets, and I got clean right about a month before my daughter was going to be born. I hit my knees and prayed to God and said, "Please take this from me." And He gave me the strength to just flush everything down the toilet. And I went back to my brother's and got prepared for this child that was on the way.
And what year was that?
What year would that have been? That's 2006.
Okay. So you had a baby born in 2006 and 6?
Yes, yes,
All right. And you were clean.
I was clean.
Okay. So how did that how did that
Well, now how did that go back into me being high again? Uh, the way that that worked, I was clean, and then this female that I was with, she ended up pregnant again. This was after we had splitting up, but we don't have 15 hours, so I'm gonna. We broke up. She was living in Augusta. I was in Wichita. She called me and said she was pregnant. She's my wife at this time, um, and we were supposed to be getting divorced. So I said, okay, well, if you're pregnant again, she couldn't afford to live on her own, so I moved to Augusta with her. And when I moved up there
Augusta?
to Augusta, I found out that the baby could have been someone else's. So at that point in time, I stopped talking to her, and she got a restraining order on me for no reason. And I was working at a place called Lake Point, and that's where I met my current wife. Was at Lake Point, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was love at first sight and all that stuff. And she knew what I was going through. And we ended up getting married later on, and I was working at Cessna, and same thing is how the drugs came back into play. I asked that stupid question. I really didn't even have to ask there because the guys that I was working with there were already just open about what they were doing. And it wasn't for Cessna. We worked at Cessna, but it was a different group of people that came in and did some stuff. But I started hanging out with those guys and doing the drugs and doing whatever. And I mean, I tormented my in laws and my wife and family with the way I was living.
So like when you left Phoenix, you
Mm-hmm.
were maybe 19,
Yes.
moved in with your brother in Wichita and had a season of sobriety,
Yes.
and then married, had a kid,
Two of
um,
them.
and then you had another season of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
But each time at work, you'd find somebody, you would ask them this question, so it would lead to a relapse.
I was a follower, not a leader back then, and I wanted to use, and I wanted that lifestyle. I missed the lifestyle all the time. I wanted to be able to be there was a freedom that came with that lifestyle, of being able to not care what the rules are, not care who said you have to do this or be here or be there. So back then, uh, it's not just drug use; it's also immaturity. I was just very immature, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the freedom. So I didn't want to come home to a clean house and a beautiful wife and eat dinner and do the whole thing and repeat it the next day. I wanted something different to happen every day. I wanted to run the streets. So it wasn't anyone's fault. It was my own. And anytime I got a chance, me asking that question was just me figuring it out what I was going to do. You relapse in your mind well before you actually use a drug. If you decide that you're going to go do something, then you've relapsed in your mind already. And if you don't reach out to the right person, then it'll end up becoming a physical relapse.
Yeah. I'm curious on those first times that you were sober.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you just do that totally on your own?
I did. I thought I was good, and that's one of the reasons why I continued to relapse
I didn't
because I didn't do it on my own. I put it down, and I stopped using the substance and that sort of thing. But I didn't get any tools in my toolbox whatsoever. I didn't know what a meeting was. I had
Yeah.
never been to a meeting. I didn't know what a sponsor was. The 12 steps. I didn't know anything about that. It was just, oh well, I got this child on the way, and this isn't going to fly, so I'm going to quit doing this.
Right.
And probably because I started drinking. So the drinking would make it easier for me not to do the meth. So I wouldn't say I was out of my addiction. I was still in my addiction. I was just changing up something that was more socially acceptable.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So your current wife
Mm-hmm.
has walked through a lot of stuff with you.
Yes.
Hey, was she ever in the addiction world, or was she?
No, she's gotten things that she's tried when she was younger, the average type of deal, but she's never been anything like that. When I met her, my children were babies that I have from my other marriage, and she kicked into mom mode, and she just that's what she is. She's a nurturer, and she's going to do what's important. She
Yeah.
will put aside what she feels like doing for what's important. So even like drinking, um, she's a regular occasional drinker, and when she got pregnant, nope, not drinking. So she's never been an addict.
Yeah. Did
Kind
she
of jealous. jealous of that sometimes.
Right, right. Did she ever have to work through any of like the Al-Anon kind of stuff or the like the codependency issue things or anything like that?
No.
Not really. Okay. So how many years was she with you while you were using? So you got sober in 2015, right?
Yeah.
You guys got you'd been with her. When did you guys get together?
I think 2006. When did we get together? 2010 or seven. So
2000.
2007. 2006 was your dad and Carroll. Okay.
Yeah. So she was with you when you were drugging and using for a good 7, 8 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Long time.
Wow.
She
You're
wasn't with me. We divorced.
ah, and
Yeah,
then
she wasn't with
got back
me.
with her.
Yes. And in
Ah,
2015 is when we ended up getting back together. And then even at the beginning of that, it wasn't working out too well. I went back home to Phoenix for a little bit, and then I came back here 2016, or was it 17? 16. I came back here and we've just been together ever since.
okay. Wow. Interesting. She's
Yeah.
she's that's special that she went through that with you, left, and then came back.
Yeah.
Must be true love. Love.
Yeah, we both love each other for sure. That's
That's awesome.
definite.
So what do you
Get
think?
on each other's nerves sometimes, but we love each other.
Yeah. I get on my own nerves sometimes. So
I thought I was the only person that could actually happen to, but okay.
all right. So let's talk about your sobriety. Your sobriety date is October 1st, 2015. So
Yes.
so this October you'll have eight years of belt. Is that right?
I
Eight
think it's 7 years from 2015 since I've been
of
clean.
this coming October.
This coming October, yeah.
8 years, right?
Yeah.
I
I
my
think
my
that's supposed
sobriety
to
is
be 7, I thought. My sobriety date. October 2015. Wow. Okay, yeah. 8 years.
going on 8.
I'm afraid to count anymore. I don't want to count anymore. Once you get to a certain point, I don't believe you should even count. It should become your norm. Being sober should be what you do. So
Yeah, I'm coming up on September 10th will be 4 years for me. So
congratulations, definitely.
yeah, you too. So let's talk about how. So October 1st, 2015. When and what did you do to find
I
sobriety?
didn't I didn't have to do much of anything. I was driving down the street and I got pulled over and I had methamphetamines and I had firearms and I had all sorts of things on me and got pulled over. And by the grace of God, I got pulled over because who knows what I would have done that night or been involved in. But I got pulled over by the Wichita police and I had a warrant out for failure to appear on something. And either way it goes, it was my first time ever getting arrested where I wasn't going to either get bonded out or barred out. I was going to sit there. I was going to be able to sit there. So that was what saved my life. Honestly, I feel is that God removed me from the streets because that was the only way. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to change. He needed to remove me. So the police came and did that. And I spent some time in the jail and was away from the drugs and was able to get a clear mind on me and start thinking better. And um, that's when I started praying to God again and talking to him. Because at this time, I had never really had a relationship with God. I just knew church and played the drums and all that teen stuff. But when I got out, I wasn't going to do anything. And that was my promise. God, get me through this. I'm going to get out and do the right thing. If I got to go stand in a park until the right person finds me, I'll go do that. I'm not going to go back to my old people. So that's what I did. I got out and in October, later on in October, and I actually went to a hotel room and I called my mother in Arizona and I told her, I said, I don't want to go back. Like I don't have money. I don't have nothing out here unless I go back to go try to collect it or get it or talk to a friend. I don't want to do any of that. And she had contacted my wife, ex-wife at the time, because that's the person she could trust.
Hmm.
So she called Mandy, and Mandy for sure. She met me at a Walmart, and something moved her to bring my kids, and that was it. We went and got a hotel for the time because her parents, of course, weren't going to deal with that, and she was staying with her parents. So we went and got a hotel room, and um, went and got another hotel room in Augusta so the kids could get to them from school. And it was just crazy. God just blessed the whole situation because we had nothing. And the gentleman named Craig Patel, he owned a hotel in Augusta, and he, without me asking, came and said, "Hey, man, you want to do a little bit of work so that you guys can stay in that room?" And I'm like, "Yes, please. We're trying to figure out how we can stay in this room because her parents were not going to deal with me at their house, and my family didn't have the money to keep sending me money." So that's how that started. And then God also moved because I would take walks and listen to music, and I found a house. And I'm talking to the lady who owns the house, and I told her where I'm working and what I'm doing. And she says, "Move your family in the house." So we moved into the house, and she waited because my wife was in school at the time, for her to pay for our rent with some of her, tuition money, and worked with us and allowed us to move into this house. So we did that. And that's when me and her got in an argument, and I went back to Arizona for a little bit. But she had that home with the children and kept that home, and I went and stayed with my family, my parents, while I was out there.
Mm.
But I absconded from probation.
Okay.
That was a no-no. So the only reason I got out is because when I went to Arizona, I went to treatment, outpatient treatment, and I also enrolled myself in GED to get a GED. And I was detained before I can get the GED, but I did graduate from the outpatient treatment. So when I got in front of the judge said, "Okay, well, since I see you were trying to do whatever you were trying to do, I will let you out." And that's where my recovery really begins. That's when I went to an Oxford house. The judge would not release me unless I went to an Oxford. So I went to an Oxford. Me and my wife would communicate, and things slowly started to just grow back into what they should. But at this point in time, I got a sponsor and learned to listen to what he suggested instead of myself. So we just took it really slow, and I continued to live in Oxford. She stayed in her own place, and recovery began for me.
So when you say Augusta, you're talking Augusta, Kansas.
Yes, sir.
My mother's from Savannah, Georgia. My dad's from Wichita, Kansas. And there's an Augusta, Georgia, too. And then there's an Augusta,
Oh,
Kansas.
well,
Great, great. So Augusta, Kansas, you're living in an art house in Augusta or Wichita?
right now we live in Augusta. We have a home there. Yes.
Tell tell people who might not know who are listening, what is the Oxford House deal? And then we'll
Oxford House is a great
into Hemingway.
sober living, great sober living program. They have grown rather large. They're really really large. So it all depends on what you're looking for. But as far as their rules, their regulations, and the way that they do things, it works. If you apply it and you want to get clean and sober, I had a clean home to go to every day. I had accountability, which any of us in recovery that have worked a real recovery know accountability is everything. So you'll get the accountability you need in order to start working and doing the things that you need to do. There's a lot of other great programs as well, but Oxford House is where I got my recovery at.
Yeah, and just there could be parents out there or friends out there listening who have a friend or a child or a loved one who's an addict.
Oh yeah,
Um, they're you know they're desperate to try to help. Obviously we can only be there if somebody reaches out, right? But there are Oxford houses all over America, right? Probably
all
most
over America.
major
They are all over the place.
houses. They have homes for women, homes for men. You
Women and children.
Yeah, women and children. And if you are in an Oxford house, typically you have to commit to sobriety. You have to work a job. You have to help pay the rent. You have a sponsor. You're working the 12 steps. You're
Equal
probably getting
equal expenses shared is what they call it. Not rent, but equal expenses shared. Everyone's equally responsible. You have a comptroller there that's going to tell you what you guys have in the bank and is responsible to do food shopping for the house. You vote on everything, so everyone just equally pays their part.
and you're probably getting drug tested what? Probably randomly or weekly or
You get random drug tests. Sometimes it depends on your behavior. Sometimes if you seem like you're having some issues, you're going to get drug tested. If you have to spend time away from the home and go visit family for a week, but you come back after work, you're going to get drug tested to make sure that you stayed solid.
yeah. And Oxford is a 12-step program, right? They use the 12 steps,
It
the
is. Yes.
houses do. Yeah. And so you started going to meetings
Hmm.
when you were living in the house.
Yes.
You go to meetings inside the house or meetings outside?
Outside.
You got
You
to
have
go.
a certain amount of outside meetings that you have to hit. I
Okay.
would go to outside meetings.
So did you find a home hall like your home group kind of thing?
Recovery in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so take us from there. So you and your wife, your kids got back together again at some point.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we got back together at the point where I I went to a place called Hemingway House. It was called Hemingway House at the time. It was an apartment complex, and that was all that they had was the apartment complex. And there was a young lady named Tracy Hall that was running the place at the time. And I had moved into that program because I graduated from having to be at an Oxford house, and I could actually be in an apartment. So I wanted to go there to have my own apartment so my kids could come over and things like that. Well, my wife ended up moving in with the kids into an apartment there, and it was during the time that the place was in a transition, and I started working for Hemingway House, and that's when I became their lead there that ran the whole program and was in charge of everyone there and stuff like that.
Cool. What year was that?
What year was Hemingway?
2016, maybe
2018.
18. Okay.
Yep.
So tell me who what is the name Hemingway Unchained? What does that represent?
I would be lying if I said that represented anything. I know there's a writer named Hemingway or something like that
Yeah.
that pretty much almost sued the old Hemingway for if they use his quotes or something. The only reason why the word Hemingway is still in the name of my sober livings, honestly, is because I've worked my behind off alongside of other people that work their behinds off for the community to know who we are. So
Hmm.
now that I own it, and now that it's Hemingway Unchained, one day I'll probably take the Hemingway out of it. It's just that I have to discuss that with people who have worked their butts off to really, get the community involved in what it is we're doing.
Yeah, and it had a little bit of branding behind it and some equity in it and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, so tell us about Hemingway Unchanged Sober Living. You you own and run this. Is it a nonprofit organization?
It is not a nonprofit organization, and the reason why it is not is because I am not savvy enough in business to have a nonprofit. With a nonprofit, so many people think that it's just come up with a name and pick a few people. There's way too much that goes into a nonprofit if you don't know what you're doing and you're not doing it right. And that's what happened with the old Hemingway. I was working with people that had they're about the money. Just let's just be blunt. They wanted to rent houses and they wanted to get big money back from the houses being rented, and they owned houses and properties. And the way we were moving was as a profitable company, and it was very, very illegal. Some of the things that were going on. So I was going to step away from the whole thing and do my own thing. And we went and sat down with a professional and the lady who runs these other 501c3s. And she was like, no, you guys can't be on your board and own a house that is making money. So either way it goes, my wife, my mother-in-law, and I came up with our name and started our own LLC where it would be easier, where it's just, hey, pay our taxes and make sure we do what we're supposed to be doing. That way we can help the community.
Yeah. So when did you start this and tell us about the actual situation? Like, do you own houses or rents, or how many people are
I
you
do not.
serving right now?
I do. I
Okay.
don't own any of the houses. I rent the houses. At this point in time, one day in the future, maybe I'll own some of the houses, but right now we rent the homes. It makes it, like I said, a lot easier as far as taxes go and all that. We just show them that we're renting and what we're paying as far as utilities. We just focus more on the clients, and that's what I would like to do. Is that's where my gift from God is to be dealing with the clients, talking to them, giving them rides, giving them advice, taking people like if someone moved out from Kansas City and man, I have a court date in Kansas City, I don't know how I'm going to get there. We will actually take them to Kansas City and do those sorts of things to make sure they get to their court dates. So just having a heart for the people, I know that God will bless and that money will be made, but I don't want to focus on solely just trying to be making money. I want to focus on having a solid program that I'm actually able to be used by God to do what He wants me to do.
So, do you have more than one house right now?
We have 4 homes at the moment, soon to be 5.
Okay, so you got soon to be five, and
Mhm.
are these all homes right now? They
I
men?
have one female's home, and
Okay,
I have right now we have 3 men's homes. We don't have anything for women and children or men and children yet, but we're going to work on that. And we also are trying to figure out how to do something more about mental health because there's in Wichita at least, there's a little bit of lagging in the area of mental health, which mixes in with addiction. And you get some people that just don't quite fit in with the regular crowd. So we're trying to see how we can help with that.
yeah, yeah. So how many people are you serving right now through the four homes, soon to be five?
I wish I had my list in front of me. I would, the women's house. I know beds 8 women. Um, my larger house, we can have 12 men in it, and they're all full. They're always full. That's why we're getting ready to open up another one. So
Very
I
cool.
wouldn't. Do we have a list here?
Probably got
How many people we have in the program?
30 plus people at least. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 32, and it's a lot smaller scale right now than what it was when we had the complex, but definitely it's better.
And do you set this up like, is there like a house lead that kind of
Yes,
runs the program? Do you run it similar to what Oxford? Do you have some of the
we
same?
run we run very similar to Oxford House. I mean, and let's just be real about it. Anyone who has a sober living out there that's doing anything serious is going to have some similarities to an Oxford House.
Yeah.
But we're a little bit different in how personal we're able to get with them, just because we're not as on big of a scale.
Mhm.
I actually have paid people who work for me instead of it being where you're just a house president and you do it for free and you go work a job. I have an assistant that this is her job. This is what she does, and she gets paid for doing her job. And then my house presidents, we try to groom them to one day be able to have a position to make money as well. In this, they don't pay rent if they're my house president, and they just that we do a lot more training and get in depth with them on how we like to do things. We're also the only sober living with the contract with KDOC. So Kansas Department of Corrections sends all their people to us. We keep a certain amount of beds for them. So guys that are getting out of prison, they know that they can bring them directly there, and we start working with them right off the bat.
Awesome. That's good work.
Thank you.
I am I I've grown to love the recovery community. So, I pastored for decades, right? I'm 62. So
Mhm.
I I got saved out of the recreational drug world at 16, felt called to be a pastor at 16, and literally followed that path and didn't get back into drugs or alcohol or anything until I was like in my 50s. I was in insomnia and tried to start treating my insomnia for the first time when I was in my mid 50s. I went to a psychiatrist. He tried me on a number of different sleep aids, but the thing that worked really great was Xanax. And now I look back, I wish I'd have never gone down that
Right.
road, but the Xanax road anyway. Because what happened was it worked great for about 9 months, then wore off, and then I started throwing alcohol on top of it, and then the Xanax alcohol combo. I basically did every night for 2.5 years, and it messed my brain up and caused me to do all kinds of stupid things. So
I understand completely.
I'm pastoring this large, growing mega church with a few thousand people, and I'm just basically gradually going off the rails, and ended up costing me everything except for my life. But I literally lost everything, and so I, having lost all of that, I wound up in an AA program, about 3.5 years ago, and have just grown to. So I'm really networked broadly with the recovery work in Kansas City, both the Jesus centered 12 step groups as well as
Yeah.
just higher power 12-step groups. I work in both worlds, and I've done interviews with all kinds of people like yourself here in Kansas City, from Joe Reed at the Healing House to Carl Wu at Artists Helping the Homeless to uh, the Welcome House here with Jamie Boyle. These are all people like yourself who are leading um, programs with houses, with apartments for men, women, children. It's really, and I tell you, some of the most inspiring stories that I've ever come across, I come across in the recovery community. Like
God uses the broken.
people like yourself. I mean, people, if they would have intersected you at a certain time in your life, they probably would have counted you out and not given you any hope.
Oh, there, yeah, definitely. I counted myself out, and that's when it's bad when you're sitting somewhere and you can't imagine your life any other way, and you go ahead and make peace with, oh, I'm just going to be like this for the rest of my life. So, I'm going to die alone in some little apartment and just do my drugs, and that's okay as long as I have my drugs. Like that's when it's bad.
Yeah. 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 So now you, with these years of sobriety under your belt, now you're working the program, you're giving it back, you're seeing other,
Yeah.
you're investing in other people. I'm sure. Do you have some fun stories that kind of stand out to you over the last couple, 2 or 3 years?
Not really. It's unfortunately, because of the way that I was pulled into starting off, running and being in charge of sober livings. I've spent the whole time, a lot of the time in business and on the business end of it, and I've been taken advantage of a lot by a lot of people, and then breaking away from that and trying to. It's just been a lot of work. I've recently um, just been kind of standoffish a little bit and been in the background a little bit, just taking a break because I think the important thing about addiction and doing what we do, if you're a pastor, if you're someone who pours out, it's very important for us to get time management down because what we do is we pour out, pour out, pour out until we're empty. And then if we're not focusing on getting anything from anywhere that we need, then what happens is our emptiness can take us right back to exactly what you described as wanting to get some sleep, taking some Xanax, to drinking, to whatever the case is. And unfortunately, the communities are not as forgiving on us when we admit or we say we've done something wrong. They're not as easy on us as we are. So then it can make you even more upset because you're like, wow, as many people as I help and I listen to. So for the last maybe 6 months, I've been kind of backing up, planning, seeing where God wants me to be and how He wants me to be there instead of jumping in with all fours. Because when I'm jumping in with all fours, there's going to be people who hurt your feelings. There's going to be people who you had confidence in that let you down. There's going to be all sorts of things like that. And I think that what happens to us leaders is sometimes we get empty. So I'm trying to work on time management right now. I've got some children that are going to be graduating soon, and I've got some great leaders that work with me. So kind of letting them step in and do some of the hands-on work, and just kind of growing our company. We just for the first time got set up to do our taxes, and I've never done this before, so I'm trying to figure that out. So any advice that any good Christian God-fearing business people have for me, I'm glad to take. I just don't want to. I don't want to mess with any what's that, body brokers. Like, I believe that goes on a lot, and I'm not a body broker and don't want to deal with any.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a, just like a good Christian bookkeeping company here in Kansas City that I hire to make sure I dot all my I's, cross all my T's in terms of my spirituality adventures, and then the church I pastor are two nonprofits, and I always just try to get a good accountant bookkeeper that knows what they're doing and keeps me on
Gotta have it.
the rails. So
Yeah.
well, so when people come to one of your homes right now, what's the typical, is there a month, like is it a 6 month program? Is it a 1 gram? Is it a 9 month
We
program?
don't we don't put anyone, if you're doing well there, you can stay as long as you want to stay. We are a grow or go program.
Hmm.
So grow or go means that we basically want to see that you're not stagnant. If you're just sitting there and life is life and you're not growing, you don't have anything positive going on in your life, that's a problem. So we encourage people, definitely, just like Oxford or any other. There's some other great sober livings that are out here too, and we encourage people to go to meetings, go to church, go to get involved in some things. We don't force people to go to church, but we encourage them. We'll give them rides if they want to go to church. We'll pick you up, take you. But I have a house that I think no one has moved out of. The only revolving beds is the KDOC beds, because the KDOC contract, they put people in there for a certain amount of time and that's it, and then they move them out. But the guys that live in that house, they won't move. They just won't. They're happy. So to me, if I need space for newcomers, I'll just go open another house. I'm not gonna force those guys to move out or anything like that. They're comfortable with each other. They're following all the rules. They're growing. They've got people who don't have licenses are getting their licenses back, and jobs and better jobs. So they're progressing.
Yeah, yeah, it's good
As
stuff.
far as the women, I don't involve myself in it. I don't believe that I have something to offer to anything one on one with another woman, or going into a women's house. Women should be comfortable in their home. They should know that their leader is going to be someone who's the same as they are. So that's how my assistant manager came about. She's been wonderful and she helps us run everything. But when it comes to women, she deals directly with the women. My wife will step in sometimes if something needs done, but the women don't need men coming in and getting on them or saying nothing to them. So they deal with women directly.
Yeah, yeah, it's good stuff. So when you think about like when the 12 step program talks about, those first three steps deal with surrender, right? Admitting you're powerless, that your life's unmanageable, and then moving into that surrender to your higher power. And then you've got that step 11 where you're talking about, prayer. And so the spiritual, how did that work for you, the spiritual side of your recovery? How did that play out for you?
Well, the spiritual side of my recovery is I learned that um, I'm not perfect and I can't be. So I kind of stopped trying to challenge myself to be perfect, because I'm just like any other, or I'm sure a lot of other God fearing men and women, to where, if you feel like you've let God down or disappointed him, you feel like you can't talk to him, you can't pray, you can't go around the people that are a certain way. So I really had to learn that I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a terrible person. I just needed to change some things in my life. So when my spiritual awakening was definitely, it helped me to stop trying to be perfect. So that way, if I made a small mistake, it didn't turn into a large mistake and a larger mistake, because I pushed God away. I pushed him out of my life because I was ashamed and I thought he was ashamed. I know that God loves me all the time, no matter what. So therefore, if I'm doing something wrong, you know, then repent, move on, fix it, whatever the case is. And that helped me a lot. My sponsor, I have one of the best sponsors in the world named Troy Shervin. He comes out to Kansas City a lot. But we went through the steps, and the steps truly are tools for the toolbox. I
Mm-hmm.
think that cognitive thinking classes or any sort of studies with that, and also the 12 steps is great.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, I did a little bit of therapy. Like, so I was in the recovery 12 step world, going to meetings. I also got into therapy, and I did like DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, which has a cognitive component to it. And
Mm-hmm.
another one called family systems. Um, so those were mental health components for me that I just needed to work stuff, my own emotions, my own thoughts, I hated myself. Like I had failed. My failure was, I ended up on the front page of the Kansas City Star Sunday edition. Megachurch pastor go cab, you know. So
Yeah,
it was a big public thing here in Kansas City, and I felt humiliated and ashamed, and
for
probably,
being a human.
probably didn't care if
Yeah,
I died. Actually, that was
yeah.
so much shame. I had self hatred. So part of my healing and sobriety was learning to forgive and love myself again. I mean, that was actually that was actually the hardest part for me, I think, was to myself and to own my story and say, hey, this is it. This is what I did, and make
Yeah,
amends and move forward.
I understand completely. That's why I tell a lot of people, like, you can tell the way some people start to look at you when you're their pastor or when you're their leader in the house or you own something. And I tell them all the time, look at God, look at Jesus, look at God. It's okay if you like something or that I've done and you think it's wonderful, but it is not me. Look, because that's what happens when something happens. You're not a human all of a sudden anymore. You're. How could you ever do this? Well, we're all battling the same things here on this earth,
Yeah.
and we're just being used by God to do what we do. So sometimes we may make a mistake. It could happen, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, because we're on such a pedestal to some people, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because even even as a daughter of a growing and quote successful church, I would never I'd always try to be authentic and you know get myself off the pedestal, right? By telling and make myself the hero of every story I told. I would tell my foibles and tell my faults, but it seems like in the people still have a tendency to put you there even if you're honest and vulnerable, right? And then and then when you mess up really big, then they're like shocked.
yeah, everybody. I mean, that's what we're groomed for. Look at the TV shows and look at the things we watch. We're groomed to wait for a hero or a Superman or a Batman or something. And when you give somebody a little glimpse of hope that that you telling your truth and your downfalls, just having the courage to do that will make them even more so. Oh wow, this is great. And then, but still, like you said, when something goes wrong, you know. But I mean, they even look what they did to Jesus. So
I know.
we're nowhere near who he is.
Right. 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 Um, so how do you what are some key things for you? Like you say, you're stepping back a little bit, trying to do some self-care, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, it's the
What
recovery community here can be very loud, and what's going on out here right now in Wichita is there's a lot of new sober livings. After we had the whole Corona thing go, there's
Mhm.
a lot of investors and a lot of people with money looking for something to do to make some passive income. So you've got a lot of people branching off, and there's a lot of houses and names and this and that. I want mine to be authentic. I want mine to continue to be authentic. So I'm very involved with my sober living, but I'm involved with slowing down. I'm just kind of in the background, meaning I'm not out advertising and making the community know, hey, look at us, we're over here. Because to me, it looks too much like all the others, not all the others, but some of the others that are jumping off right now. And there's not people who don't have a heart for it. There's people who don't have a heart for it that are starting to do what they do. And I don't want to be recognized as one of those. I just want for my stuff to be authentic. If God sees fit for me to only have 6 houses ever, then that I want to do what he has for me. I don't want to do 20 or 30 or 40, so I just kind of slow down and just everyone doesn't know everything we have going on because they don't need to, and we need to focus on the ones that we do have, and we're doing that. So it's just been very very loud in the community out here. So I don't go out to a lot of meetings right now, um, just because I don't agree with some of the stuff going on, and I just don't want to be involved in it.
Mhm. Yeah. So what do you
I'd
do?
rather hit some Zoom meetings.
Okay. Okay. So
Yep.
I'm just like, what are some of the key things you're trying to do, just for your own self-care maintenance, that kind of thing? Zoom meeting.
Church, going to church and
Okay.
prayer, meditation, Zoom meetings. I'm gonna do some in California just to get with a different group. Just do some Zoom meetings with some faces I don't know. Get out of my comfort zone
Okay.
a little bit and do that. Um, yeah, I work. I have a job, so I got a job because I started doing this job because I was going to get some of my guys from my houses hired here, and I thought I could get a feel for the way things work. And I've been sown so much love here that I just decided to stick around. So I work for a place called the Mattress Hub, and I'm one of the warehouse managers, and I get to come here and as you can see, I'm here now and I'm on the phone with you. So we all support each other in what we do. and the owner became the county commissioner now. But he helps a lot of people in recovery, gives them jobs, gives them second chances, and things like that. So
Yeah. Well, I tell you, um, recovery community, like people like yourself, you know, once you get sobriety under your belt, just the fact that you continue to be there for new people, it's so powerful. I mean, I've known people come to the the recovery world when they could be close to being dead,
yeah,
close to being in jail or prison, close to being homeless, or they are homeless, or they have lost everything. They have lost their families, or have lost. Nobody believes in them anymore. And the community, the people that are there are the people like us that continue to reach out and do
yeah,
meetings and show up for people, and it
and that's
saves
what keeps it going.
it saves lives.
There's a lot of great people that are out here doing great work. We have a group here called Reaching Out, and it's great. It's just it's a messenger, and what it is most of the leaders in most of the Oxford houses that are presidents are on it. You have Second Chance out here that's called Second Chance Bail Bonds. They have a bail bonds and they have some houses. You have Wichita Bonding Co. You have some good groups of people, and we're all on this Reaching Out chat because if, say, I've had someone for 3 times I've let them move in my house and it's just not working out. Instead of sending them off to the streets, I can put them on that reaching out chat and say, hey, obviously they need something different than what we have to offer. Is there anyone willing to move this person in, give them an interview, couch this person? So we're all connected out here in a way so that we can continue to help the community.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. People, uh, if he wants to get a hold of you in Wichita, or somebody has a referral or something like that, how do they get a hold of what's the way to get a hold of Hemingway Unchained Sober Living?
Well, we have a direct line, which is my phone number they can call. I mean, all the POs know about it. So a lot of times it has to do with probation. Um, once we expand to like Kansas City or somewhere like that, what I like to do is make it a point to let the judges and the lawyers and all that system know because in addiction, most of us end up dealing with those people. So I like to deal with the probation officers and find out what it is that they would like to see us do and what they're struggling with and what we can how we can perform to help them with their clients. And that's a lot of times our phone calls come from the POs.
Okay.
Hey, I got a client here, or their client calls us because they told them they need to call us. And like I said, then if we're not able to help that person, if I got a call from Kansas City and I can't help a person because I'm full or something, I have all the resources in the world to get them talking to an Oxford house or get them talking to another program somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Simply by picking up the phone and getting on that chat.
yeah. So there's a phone number. Is there a website? Is there a Facebook?
We do have a website. I'll have to send that to you. We have a website.
Okay.
We do have a Facebook page. But the website's what I want to start using more often. I just got to get it out there.
Okay. So Hemingway Unchained Sober Living.
Unchained Sober Living.
If you
Yes, sir.
Google that, what comes up?
I have no idea. Google Hemingway Unchained Sober Living. Let's see. I've got a bunch of phones, so I can do it. Let's see. Let's see.
Oh, it popped. I had already Googled it, so it popped right up on mine.
Did it pop up?
Yep.
Well, that's good.
HemingwayUnchained.org. There it is. HemingwayUnchained.org. That's it, right? 316
I'm not finding it.
501168.
That's me.
All right. There it is, folks. Go to HemingwayUnchained.org. And there's a resource there in Wichita. And Bryan, thanks so much for doing this, for sharing your story.
You're very welcome. Thanks for
Sure you
having me.
stay in touch, especially if you come to Kansas City. Um, I've got a lot of network here,
Oh,
and then I'm a Wichita kid, so I was born in Wichita. So I was just so
I'll be coming out
grateful.
there. I want to check out the meeting or two, so I'll definitely hit you up personally about that.
I've got an extra room. If you need a place to stay, you're welcome to stay in. I, I have free rent with my with my friends who stay here. So Not
No.
permanently, just no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, but yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to hear your story. I love to hear another story of a person who's gone through the miracle of recovery and is continuing to reach other people. That does good to my soul. So thanks so much, Bryan.
Thank you.
Amanda, thank you. Appreciate it.
Jesus. Lee.
All right. Well, so glad to so glad to connect with you guys around the recovery world, and I'll be praying for you guys. So take care and let's
You.
stay in touch.
You as well.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and we'll see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.